The languages are similar and the food is similar. So I am doing my best to put my history right. All right. So let's continue. Let's get it. So today we're going to talk about the political and spiritual power of the Kandake Queens, feminine leadership, symbolism of the Lion Temple of Naqa, the esoteric role of Apedemak, the Kushite practices, links between Ethiopia, Kush, and Kemet. Believe it or not, they're all connected. Hidden African spiritual system, and like and subscribe so you don't miss anything. And I think the fam is already talking. Yeah, yes, they are. Yeah, very beautiful. Yeah, all right. And I haven't forgot about you also about Congo too. I haven't forgot about that. Let's go. Now, here it is. When we deal with the political and spiritual power of the Kandake Queens, when we talk about, say, the African greatness, this is true. Indigenous rooted greatness. We cannot ignore the women that stood at the helm of civilization. The queens, the Kandake queens, sometimes spelled Candace, weren't just royal consorts. They weren't just wives of the king, right? These women were warriors, strategists, spiritual leaders, and rulers in their own right. I cannot stress that enough. These sisters were powerful, okay? In the Kushite Empire, especially during the height of Meroe's influence around 300 before Common Era to 350, the Kandake held a position that would rival, if not surpass, that of her male counterparts. This wasn't just symbolic power or, just a placeholder. This was real political, military, and spiritual leadership. We as a people always connected all of those things. The political side, the military side, and spiritual side. We don't divorce those. That's the reason why a lot of people don't understand what's going on in our society. It's because our leaders are not connected with all these things. We have leaders that talk a lot, but they don't throw hands. We have a lot of people that throw hands, but they're not connected to the ancestors. See what I'm saying? So there you have it. Now, before I get to that, the title, it wasn't just a name. It passed through lineages. Okay, it was often co-ruled with the king. In many instances, she held more sway. Just like Queen Tai, who had a lot of political power and a lot of influence during the 18th dynasty. The Candaces of Nubia, of Kush, had the same power. So she decided foreign policy. She led troops into battle and represented divine authority in both public and private ceremonies and temple rites initiations. According to classical sources like the Greek historian Strabo and Roman accounts, these women commanded armies against the Romans and held their own. Okay, according to sources, the Meroic cursive writing, the queen is referred to as Kordik or Kordik. Okay, Kordik. She was a Kor, Qore, Kor and Kandake. Kor and Kandake. Kor means ruler, Kandake means queen. So she was both. You see what I'm saying? So according to the Meroic script, Meroic writing, she was Kor and Kandake. All right. Now, like I said, they held their own. It wasn't just ritual, but it was absolute, right? So, what were some of these ceremony and temple rites? Give me a minute. Because I know Brother Mo, once he check in, he wanna know about that. All right, now back to political and spiritual power Kandake queens. Okay, now the Queen Amani Reines, Queen Amani Reines of Nubia, one of the most famous Kandake. When Augustus Caesar tried to bring Kush under Roman control in 25 before Common Era, she wasn't playing with him. See, a lot of people think that Rome ran everything and ran everybody. When they came to the south, when they crossed the desert of Kemet into Nubia, they weren't playing with them. Okay, they really drew the line, and they had Ta-Seti was called the land of the bow, and it wasn't just talk. Your eyes would come up missing miles away. They wasn't playing with you. So when Augustus Caesar tried to bring Kush under Roman control, Amani Reines led the troops and she was doing this with one eye. Okay, she led them into battle, captured Roman forces, even defaced statues of Augustus in a symbolic act of rebellion. This was no accident. This was psychological warfare in ancient style. They was not playing with them. They was see, we forget that not only the Europeans were destroying or defacing statues. Our ancestors were doing the same thing, and they said, "Bro, you keep doing that, we got you. We're gonna tear your stuff up," right? So she was the most formidable ruler of Kingdom of Kush, the powerful Nubian civilization that thrived in which is now Sudan. She ruled approximately Amani-Reina's. She ruled around 40 BC to 10 before Common Era, and she was part of the Kandake dynasty, a line of powerful queens. So she inherited a kingdom with the strong military already. She just took it to the next level. Okay, they had deep traditions and spiritual connection to the Neteru. Okay, as Kandake, she was expected to be not just a ruler, but a warrior, a strategist, and a religious leader who defended her land and its cultural identity. I told you guys they needed all of these things. Okay, they needed all of these things. Our African leaders did all these things. Let me see. Library Without Borders said, I agree about the leaders leading and not being connected to the answer. These are facts. That's the reason why when they get into power, we don't know what's going on or why they switched up. They weren't for us in the first place because they didn't come from among us. We're so quick to raise up leaders not knowing where they come from, not knowing who they really are. That's our problem. We don't vet people. We vet people, but then we don't vet at the right time. Okay. We vet people when it comes down to what they say and how they say it. But we invite everybody else to the cookout, though. You see what I'm saying? So that's a problem. Okay. Let's continue. So one of the defining moments of Amani-Reina's was her conflict with the Roman Empire. Okay, in 30 before Common Era, following the defeat of Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony. Look, I told you Cleopatra wasn't her. Okay, she was defeated along with her new boyfriend. And Egypt fell under Roman control, and Emperor Augustus attempted to expand the Roman influence into Nubia, and they wasn't having that. Refusing to accept Roman rule, Amani-Reina's launched an audacious military campaign against Rome, invading southern Egypt, capturing several key cities, including Aswan and Philly. Shout out to the fam. Shout out to the fam in Aswan. Okay, believe it or not, ready or not, the Aswan area has a lot of Nubian and Southern Egyptian culture and influence, right? That is where if you want to know where the original Egyptians live and where they are now, they're in the Aswan area. Very welcome. So Amani-Reina, her forces destroyed Roman statues and even defaced the statue of Emperor Augustus, right? Now remember, she led her troops. This is a one-eyed warrior queen. She led them into battle. She captured the Roman forts and even defaced the statues. This was no accident. Okay. I said it again. This was not an accident. Okay. She knew that this attack was going to bruise Rome's ego. And I think they still haven't gotten over that. Okay. All right. Now, so this has roots in deep African matrilineal culture, right? The thing is, in order to rule, the king and queen had to be of Southern lineage. They had to bring balance in and bring divine balance in Ma'at, and the queen embodied the vital aspect of this balance. Okay, in order to rule the two lands, Kush and Kemet, the king and queen had to be from the south. Now, for example, I mentioned this many times. There's only a couple of times where a king in Kemet marries somebody within the family, some kind of royal family, right? But normally, The rulers came from the south. They're either from another royal family or straight up from Ethiopia, Sudan. So the king had to have someone of southern lineage, Ethiopian or Sudanese, ensuring that divine authority flowed through maternal royal bloodlines. The Kandake was the gatekeeper of legitimacy. Okay, now, so this really quick, this has roots deep in when we think about it. The power, when it come down to leadership and rulership, the power didn't come through the father; it came through the mother. Okay, the power was in most African royal systems, other than maybe the Zulus. Correct me if I'm wrong. The root of power came through the mother, not the father. And scientifically, genetically, your genes are stronger through your mother's side, not your father's side. Okay, but the womb is not just the giver of life; it was the keeper of kingship. And so the Kandake was not just a partner, but a maker of kings. Without her, the king's authority was suspect. Okay, this is why Egyptian pharaohs, especially those trying to establish new dynasties, would marry Kushite queens. It wasn't just politics, it was spiritual validation. Okay, even in funerary art and temple inscriptions, you see the Kandake seated as an equal to the king, and sometimes even larger than him, physically and symbolically dominating the frame. Okay, she's seen offering to the natural to the gods, leading rituals, holding the fly whisk or crook and flail, because they had that in Kush also, because Kush gave birth to Kemet. These same symbols carried by kings of Kemet. Now, these weren't gender symbols, they were power symbols. See, we had to get past, gender and roles and whatnot. Some of these things straight up represented power. If you held them, and if you knew what they were and what they meant, it meant power. Okay. So we got to get past, hearsay and gender wars and all these things. We as a people got to be focused on the absolute and what is. Okay. So when our ancestors were leading the people, they implemented power. The Kandake held both the physical and metaphysical keys to rule. Okay. Now, modern African women looking for role models rooted in heritage should not have looked outside of Africa. That's my opinion. Okay, the Kandake queens, they're them. Leadership wasn't just a concept; it was an actual reality. It was balanced, it was inclusive and spiritual, and it's important that we as a people acknowledge and teach this. Okay, we got to reclaim this. We got to embed it somehow in our memory. We have to get further south. We got to do it, y'all. We're focused on Kemet, which is cool, but Kush and Ethiopia has something to offer also. Okay, so let's go. The spiritual science and esoteric knowledge in ancient Kushite culture. Here we go. Here it is. Now, before we get into that, though, I got a question. See, hold on. I got a question. Get ready. Here it is. Old school rap or new school rap? Let's argue. Like and comment below. Let me know. Old school rap. And now, notice I did not say era. I did not say decade. I just said old school or new school. Yeah. Let me know. Matter of fact, I didn't even regionalize this thing. I didn't. Okay, for music lovers, I know it can go deep. I know, but y'all let me know. Old school rap, new school rap. Okay, is it the 90s? Okay, which side of the 90s? Is it pre-95? Okay. Okay, old school rap. Duh. Okay, now. Okay, since Library Without Borders went on, put this out here. Okay. Now, which era, which decade? Because according to some people, okay, they would say anything but before this year is old school. Matter of fact, they're saying that DMX and And Tupac and them, that's old school. Wait a minute, hold on. You know, so which decade? Which one? Is it the 80s? Which is it the 90s? Is it Blue says I'll pass on all of it. I can't. Okay, I can't because because hip hop is part of our culture. That's part of our storytelling culture. You see what I'm saying? We have griot. We focus on, say, the West African griot, the jele, that tells the stories with the kora and the music. We still do it. We just use another form of it, but we gotta do right by it, right? All right, let's go. Now, spiritual knowledge and esoteric, spiritual science and esoteric knowledge, right? Let's get it. Okay. Let me get my screen together. Now, so getting into the spiritual technology, the esoteric science that powered Kushite civilization. See, we talk about ancient cultures, but we often get caught up in the visible, what is seen. The pyramids and the gold and the lineages or the warfare, the political issues, Queen Sebek-Neferu, King Tut and them. But what's often left out what happened is it gets dismissed or misunderstood. So these civilizations perceived a different kind of reality for us. The Kushite had a layered worldview. They understood the universe as a bridge between the seen and the unseen. The Kushite family, the people of ancient Kush, they believed there was a bridge between the seen and the unseen. Okay, the visible and the invisible, the tangible and the energetic. Okay, and they didn't just believe it; they lived it, and they structured their society around it. Right. So the Kushite, like their Egyptian children, had spiritual knowledge that was not separate from daily life. It was embedded in everything: how they farmed, how they forged metal, how they buried their ancestors. But it wasn't superstition; it was a reality to them. Okay, it was coded wisdom, passed down through initiation, symbols, guilds, and oral tradition. This was a spiritual science, a system of understanding between the seen and the unseen worlds. We as Africans in the diaspora, and I said that, and I meant what I said, we have always connected the spiritual with something physical. We have always done that. Okay, let me see what the family is saying. Let me see. Okay, Library Without Borders. I grew up with most of the 80s era, being born in the 80s and 90s. The 90s all the way early 2000s would have been influenced my teen years. Yeah. Music has a major influence in our society, believe it or not. And that is, believe it or not, even though the CDs, the tapes, records or whatever, that was a scene, but the musical notes was part of that unseen. Now it is in Wi-Fi. Now it is in that space. Okay. So this was a spiritual science for us, a system of understanding the seen and unseen. We use those words to explain what we feel and what we think, right? So the esoteric science that powered Kushite civilization. See, when we talk about ancient culture, we also get caught up, like I said, pyramids, gold, royal lineages, warfare, right? But what's often left out, gets dismissed and misunderstood. The Kushites, just like other African cultures, Yoruba, shout out to the family Yoruba, Bakongo, Nzambi Mupungu, okay, Zulu, okay, Unkulukulu. They are a layered worldview. Once again, the Kushites, just like other African cultures, the Yoruba, they use the Orishas, right? The Bakongo, Nzambi Mupungu, and the Zulus, that's Unkulukulu. Okay, I may mispronounce it, but they all have a similar root. They all are trying to explain the unseen or the unexplainable. Okay, and they use science. It's not just shell throwing and a few words. This is an actual science. Okay, and so, and fun fact, a lot of my ancestors did come from either they came from these areas. So I do have a heart for that. Grand Madam Turo, okay. All right, greet everybody to come in. Okay, all right. And shout out to Grand Madam. She is with the Rock With Me Nation. We got to bring back For real, we got to bring back TLB real quick because we still got some things to address with the Black Panther and everything. We got to deal with that. Greet everybody to come in. Okay. Landra Land. Okay, hello everyone. Great to get a better understanding of what's flowing through my DNA. Yeah, we discussed a little bit of genetics. We did that. We talked about the Jed and the genetics symbolism with the actual Jed pillar. Check that out when we get done with this. But yes, a lot, believe it or not, see a lot of like the Fulani and the Hausa, a lot of West African nations in their stories, they would say that they came from the Nile Valley or from the East Africa somewhere. Okay. Yeah. So it's serious. They would say that. And you know, and a lot of people try to separate themselves from Africa. I can't speak for them, but I do know I did run a DNA test and my ancestors came from some of these places. Okay. All right. So the Bakongo are actually a tribe in Congo. That's new. I didn't know that. Okay, this is so cool. You need to work with the pronunciation. Yeah. I told you I'm country as corn, so a lot of my words don't come out right, but I know what I'm saying. I think. Yeah. Afro. Let me see. Afro. N8V World. Okay, Habari Yajoni, brother. Give thanks for this knowledge stream. Yeah, Habari Ghani. What's going on, y'all? Okay. Yeah, he said being late is better than a no-show because I'm checking roll. I'm checking roll. All right. So let's get it. Let's go. All right. Now, let's go because the family's been asking about esoteric and Kemetic science. And I decided to lace it in here. Surprise, you're welcome. Here it is. Esoteric science. They understood, the Kushite people understood the universe as a bridge between the seen and the unseen, the visible, the Kahet, the visible Kaet, and the invisible Sekhem. We talked about Sekhem, which is a energy, some sort of power. We talked about that also, the tangible and the energetic. And they didn't just believe, they lived it, right? So yes, as you see, okay. This represents the Haru M Aket, these two lines here, right? And you see the little circle with the little bowl that represents the horizon, right? So, what does this mean? What does this mean? This means this person or ruler or leader is focused on the past, present, and the future. Okay. Whenever you see this, okay, this is a multi-dimensional thinking process, a 3D or 4D thinking process. All right. So whenever you see this, this is the Haru M Haket, and this is a symbol that represents past, present, and future. All right. Yeah, we're going to get a little bit of Kemetic and esoteric science a little bit, but I like this symbol. It means a lot to me. But that basic that circle represents the sun in the horizon. Okay, but be it rising or setting. Okay. Now the Kushites believed that spiritual knowledge was not separate from daily life. They embedded in it was embedded in everything. This was superstition. This was sacred knowledge. This science was a living, breathing science of consciousness, energy, and matter. Okay. And how it was done? It was passed down. Okay. It was passed down through initiation, symbols, guilds, and oral tradition. Okay. We forget that we have a process. Okay. Everything is an initiation process. Everything has a symbol, something symbolic. There is a guild. There is a structure. There is oral tradition. A lot of things aren't written down in books. Okay, a lot of things aren't. It's just you sitting with the elder, listening to what they say. Okay, and the system of understanding both the material, the ta, and the spiritual duat. This is a system that explains the planes of existence. Okay, now that is we're done with that part. Now we're gonna get into a little bit more of the seen world. Okay, let's start with the seen world. Okay, what you can touch, smell, build, and measure. That is the seen world. Okay, metallurgy or working metals is one. Okay, I know some people like to draw. Okay, my daughter, Princess Cam, she knows how to paint. Okay, that is another one. Okay, working before the dawn of written history, Kushites were already mastering metalwork. Okay, we are talking about the ironsmiths of Tasseti region, part of the ancestral Anu people, ANU, the Anu people. Fun fact, okay, I've been told Osiris was part of the Sudanese Anu people. Osiris was a real person, from what I've been told. All right. So the Anu people, the ancient pre-dynastic group referenced in early Comedian texts. We're going to break this down. Let's get it. Now, here it is. That picture, okay, got a better picture of that. All right. So now, in the very first line, okay, the Hetu, okay, that represents the temples. Okay. Het is one, singular. U means multiple. Hetu, that's the temple. Line 2, that is Set. Okay. Set. Now, before Osiris was popular, before Heru was popular, there was a group of people that revered Set. All right. Line 3, that is the Anu. And I told you, remember many times before, when you see that circle with an X in it, that is a city or a place. The Anu, that is a city, the cities of the Anu people. And Ta-Neter or Terra-Neter, or that is the land of God, or God's land, a devoted one of God. Okay. And we have an African here with a stick. Okay. Is a walking stick. Kind of reminds me of the Maasai people. Shout out to the people in Kenya. Okay. The Maasai people would kind of have, they were dressed like this. So this, one more time before we move on, the top line here, that when you see a little box that's shaped like a box, that is Het. Okay. That means a house. Okay, Het-U, that's temple, the house of. Okay, Set, the Netaru Set. Okay, remember before Osiris and Horus, Set was revered in a lot of places. And Net Anu, the cities of the Anu people, and Ta-Neter, that is the land devoted one to God, or land of God. Right now, here's another one. This is very familiar. This is a very famous image of Menes, or the Scorpion King. Okay. Now, notice he already has on one side, on the left-hand side, he has the white crown on his head, representing Upper Egypt, which is Nubia in the south, and the red crown, which represents Lower Egypt, which is in the north. There's some other things you can see. Okay. This is pre-dynastic. This is Narmer, who unified Upper and Lower Egypt, right? There's a couple things that caught my attention here. Heru is already there, and that looks like Anubis right there. I don't know, but yeah, we're gonna break this down in a few seconds. But look at that. Kemetic culture was already in place. Why? Because it came from Kush. Let's get it now. We'll get back to this in a second. The blacksmiths weren't just artisans in African spiritual tradition. The blacksmith was a priest of fire. I think somebody mentioned fire signs and everything. Priest of fire. The forge is not just a workplace. It is a temple, an ibit. Okay, a temple, ibit, or a Jesheru, or the Holy of Holies. Okay, so the blacksmiths weren't just somebody working. They was working magic. They was making something out of nothing. Okay, that's what it was. In their garage, or their place of business, that was part of their spiritual custom, their spiritual tradition. When they got dressed, when they put their clothes on, they was getting ready to work magic. They was getting ready to make something out of nothing. We got to think about, whenever we do something. All right, let me get out this real quick. Whenever we do something, we gotta take on the mentality that we're about to do something great and do something important, to make something out of nothing. Okay, our ancestors did it all the time. Some people call it magic, other people call it science, whatever you want to call it. But this is what they did. Okay, and their place was a sanctuary. Okay, it was important to them. This was like the oldest tradition. Okay, using fire to mold something, using water to mold something, using clay, right? Fire transforms matter, and in doing so, it echoes the transformations of the soul. This is alchemy. Yep. Land your land. Yep. You sure right. Alchemists. This is fam. This is eons before Europe knew what their left hand was and their right hand was. This is centuries before this. This is 5,000 plus years before this. They already had the understanding of alchemy. Okay. It echoes the transformation of the soul. Fire does. The hammer is just a tool. It was a wand of willpower. The banging, every strike, the pinging was an invocation. Okay. It's not craft, it's alchemy. Yeah. They was making it happen. Somebody asked them to do something for them. They made something out of nothing. This was happening in ancient Nubia. This was happening in ancient Ethiopia before Kemet came on the scene. I said what I said. Yep. Grand Madam, you came just in time because I got some time. This is summer, and the family's been asking questions. They wanna go deeper. So you bring your shovels, and we about to get into it. All right. Because yes, this wasn't just a Kemetic thing. This was a Nile Valley thing. And the people were already working metals. They was already making bricks, and they was already making stone. I'm gonna get back to that picture in a second, but the Kushite culture was already in place and intact. The customs was already in place and intact before the first dynasty. Think about it. Before we were born, we had our grandparents. They was already living and doing their thing before we got here. And when we got here, they just said, hey, do this and don't do that. Try this, don't try that. It's a good idea. Make some advanced techniques to it. Because remember, the further south you went towards Congo and those areas, that was nothing but rainforest. So they could not put everything in stone. So the oral tradition was the only way they can do anything with it. You watch what I'm doing. You see how I'm making this fire? You make this fire like that. All right? Yeah, it's a must. This is a drop down knowledge king. Yeah, it is a must. I'm out now. So we about to talk. So now that I have almost everybody that understands that this is Ujumbe Podcast is a learning institution. This is not just a person that's running his mouth and saying words. There's some things, there's facts that we're connecting, that we're using. Okay. So it's just not me talking all the time about one side of Africa and rejecting the others. Everything is connected. So let's continue. Now, the unseen world. These smiths didn't work in isolation. They belonged to mystery schools, spiritual lodges, or artisan guilds where knowledge was transmitted in degrees. So the Europeans called themselves repackaging something, repackaging a system, and telling you that you got to pay money for something that you already know. That's for free. All right. Much like the African customs, Freemasonry, or spiritual brotherhoods that came later, the initiation process was key. You didn't just learn techniques, you learned the deeper meanings, the sacred knowledge behind them. Each stage of tool making, mere stages of cosmogenesis, from chaos to order, from ore, from clay and dirt to a divine form that came out of your mind. The smith, the ironsmith, was both creator and medium, bringing this unseen, bringing the scene with the unseen through fire, intention, and mastery. Because the reason why I say fire, intention, and mastery is because of this. If it's too hot, it's not going to do anything. But if it's too cold, he won't be able to do anything with it. He was the master of this. Okay. Now, The unseen world. Let's get into it. Now, sacred cosmology, the unseen world, right? Now, you understand the theme. You understand what it is. You understand what it is. The stars, the planets, there's a rhythmic dance of the sun across the Nile Valley, right? These weren't just astronomical phenomena. These were divine signatures. Okay. This was handwritings. Okay. The Kushite understood that celestial movements were reflections of spiritual principles of ma'at and balance. Okay. The temples weren't just buildings, weren't just places to look at. They were cosmic resonators, aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and sacred stars like Sirius. These structures were designed to harness energy from the heavens. We mentioned this many times before, but a lot of temples throughout the Nile Valley was either associated with the alignment of the sun, or mostly, it depends on how old they are, they was aligned with stars. Because I learned this, the Sphinx was in line with the constellation of Leo, and that is 10,500 years ago. So a lot of these other structures, which we will talk about in the coming months, were in line with a major constellation. So that means if they were lining these stones up, these statues up to these constellations, to these stars, they was observing this thousands of years before they put a brick down. Yep. So they were aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and stars like Sirius. Like I said, they harness energy. Then there's certain times of year where certain stars or the sun would rise or set. It would shoot through some of these areas and it would light that room up. So when you walked into a temple, you're entering a space where the unseen touched down into the seen, with geometry, light, and sound created portals for divine communion. By the way, if you're enjoying this content, if you want some more of that, hit the subscribe button. And even though Abu Simbel has been moved, from its original place, which was in Nubia, the sun still rises and sets in perfect symmetry. Okay, it does. Now, really quick, here's a book reference, Fingerprints of the Gods. Okay, I will have that in the description also. All right, so there it is. Now, and I haven't forgot, the Lion Temple is loading. Yeah, we're going south. We're going south. Here it is. Now, so we're about to discuss Apedemak and the Lion Temple in a few minutes, so get ready for that. I love this picture, though. This Apedemak was nothing to be played with. Okay, this is the Nubian Neteru. He's one of the major Neteru of Nubia, Apedemak. Okay, get ready. Now, Kushite Theology. Now, the same principle that was applied in Kemet can be easily applied in Kush. Okay, Osiris, he was more than just a myth. He was actually a real person, most likely from modern Sudan or Ethiopia, who was later deified. I told you, kings become legends, legends become legendary. His narrative of death and resurrection wasn't just symbolic, it was a metaphysical instruction. Okay. And just like when we talked about Sobek Neferu in the Chamber of Ashes, there was always a process of death and resurrection, or spiritual, some kind of spiritual rebirth, or coming or growing or growth, right? Osiris, his journey mapped the soul's path from maternal life to a spiritual rebirth, right? So the reason why, according to the king's list, the reason why I say that his name is King Osiris is there are a group of pre-dynastic kings with names such as Seka, Ku, and Tu. Pre-dynastic kings, right? And get this, for those who study the Turin Canon, shout out to the fam that's really getting into this. The Turin Canon names of Ra, Geb, Osiris, Set, Haru, Jehuti, Ma'at, Haru, the Shimshu Haru. They ruled during the pre-dynastic era. Now, the Europeans would like to say that these people did not exist in physical form. They would like to say that. However, they want us to believe that Elizabeth I was a real person too. We don't know that for sure. You see what I'm saying? I know that's a crazy statement, but what I'm saying is they would like for us to believe that some of our heroes they were just myths. Some of these people were real people also. But over time, their stories became legends, right? And yes, there is a group of people called the Shimsu Haru, the 40 to 43 kings. They didn't name them by name individually, but these were 41 to 43 kings. They was called the followers of Haru. So Haru was already a person or king that was already established. So this is according to the Turin canon, pre-dynastic period. Now, do you think we should investigate? Y'all let me know. All right, comment below. You think we should investigate the kings before the pharaohs and queens before pharaohs? Because my aunt was in the mix also. Y'all let me know. All right. Now, because here's another reason why. There's a tomb of Osiris by the pyramids. That's what they call it. And they don't just call things, just be calling things. So there's a tomb of Osiris by the pyramid. Let's put two and two together. And this is what it looks like. According to them, this is what it looks like. They have the layers, and then the bottom shaft is supposedly where he would have been buried. This is by the pyramids. And we told you before that the temple of Isis was situated next to the Sphinx of Heru and Maquette. And they said, the people, where's the book at? I gotta find it. If I can find that book. Oh, here it is. In this book. Okay. Ancient Records of Egypt, Volume 1 by James Breasted. They said there was a temple of Isis next to the Sphinx. And they indicated that the people of Kemet were saying that it was older than the Sphinx. Okay. There it is. Now, and this was next to the Abydos Necropolis. The Abydos Necropolis is an ancient location. It's an ancient location. All right. So the what is that? The tomb of Osiris by the pyramids, and the Abydos Necropolis is a sacred site, and this necropolis housed a lot of pre-dynastic rulers. All right. Now, before we go further, we're about to break this down real quick. Before we go further, don't forget to like and subscribe because we're about to get into it. I told you I was coming back to get it. And so just as promised, we're going to break this down. The Narmer Pallatte. Yes, the very first king of Kemet that united the two lands. He was the first Semitawi. Okay, here we go. Now, this was established during Naqada, the Naqada 3 era. Okay, the Abydos Necropolis was established during the Naqada 3 era, 3200 to 3000 BC before Common Era. The Naqada era developed the first hieroglyphics, so it wasn't in Kemet. And as far as like the established dynasties, this happened before that. The Narmer or Menes Pallatte was made during this time. This marked the unification of Upper and Lower Kemet and the invention of sail navigation. So Mo asked the question, did the people of Egypt sail around, in various parts of the world? Yes, they did before we thought they would. Before, say, Tutmosis III and them, before Hatshepsut and all them, they was already sailing. Okay, they was already using sailboats and navigation like that. I think, let me see, hold on. I think somebody is up. Okay, what's going on, Miss Haynes? What's going on? All right. Very good. Now, here we go. The Sadek. All right. The Sadek, Serekh. Sadek. Narmer established the regular use of a Sadek. This is a rectangular enclosure representing a gate of a palace with Heru on top of it. This denoting royalty is living there, or royalty is there. Okay, what does the Sadek look like? Okay, this is what it looks like. All right. Now, in long form, you may see a gate, and maybe the falcon right there. You see a gate, palace gate, and the person's name, or you'll see Heru at the very top, on top of the palace gate. It was like an official flag. They were saying that, okay, if you see this, on a building, that means the pharaoh or the Insubiti or the royal family lives there. Okay, let's continue. Now, let's break this down. Here it is. All right, the Narmer Pallatte, okay, on the top middle, that is his name. Okay, there's Narmer or Minis, right? On both sides, what do you notice? You see a calf or a bull. That represents Heteru. This is pre-dynastic. Okay, this is pre-dynastic. So Heteru and Horus was already part of the culture, right? So on the right side, there is a boat with an open door. What do you think that means? What do you think this boat going into this open door means? What do you think? Comment below. But yes, on the right, you see a little boat and an open door. Under the boat, there are the defeated enemies. Okay, all these bodies here, they was laid out. Okay, it was done. It was cooked. All right. Then you have a priest right here wearing a leopard skin. That was another age-old tradition. We mentioned the priesthood of Amun and many other priests. They would wear the leopard skin, emblematic of their office and their station. This was already in place. This guy already had the leopard skin on. He already had it on. And in front of him, okay, were men or stewards with 4 flags or standards representing the Neteru of the ancestors. I would like to believe, I'll get a better picture in a second. I like to believe this is Heru. Also, these are different flags, different from different regions of that area, right? And we're going to get to him in a second. But we have in the middle his name. On both sides, we have Heteru. We have the boat going into a door. What do you think that means? I don't know. Y'all tell me. Bodies there. And then we have the priests and the standard bearers representing the Neteru or the ancestors. And hold on, I have an idea as far as why they're in front of the king instead of the king in front of them, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, then we have Narmer right here wearing the red crown of Lord Kemet. He's wearing a bull tail and an apron. The bull tail represents power, okay, force. He had the oxtail of the bull tail wrapped around him, and behind him was his servant with a star in his hand, right? And in the king's hand is a war hammer, okay, or a setting maul or whatever. It wasn't just for show, okay? They didn't have that hammer for nothing. You're gonna get that work, okay? All right. Let me see. Let me get to them. Now, also, we have 2 other individuals here. Okay, these are mythological figures. I don't know what their names are. I don't know. I can't say. But if you know the answer, y'all tell me. These 2 figures here wrapped together. I would like to believe. I would like to believe that this was symbolic of the king tying Upper and Lower Egypt together. Okay. And also we have another bull here breaking down the doors and trampling the enemies there, showing that he is the most powerful. And to be fair, remember, it took a lot of work for this man to unite these two groups of people. Okay, not just groups of people, nations. These were talking about not only, think about it, these were multiple gnomes, multiple rulers. Basically, these gnomes represented neighborhoods. So he had to subdue or use a little diplomacy, okay, with these other kings, or go to work, as you can see, okay. And notice the nose; it wasn't flat, okay. But notice it took a lot of power and a lot of strength and knowledge to unite the 2 lands. That he did. Now, also, we have Heteru again. We have that hammer or setting maul right there, about to go to work. But notice this is Heru again. Okay. So Heru was already in Kemetic culture before Kemet became an empire. Heteru or Hathor was also in place before Kemet was an empire. Okay. Now, this was another one, the crystal incense. the crystal incense. This is a small little circular like incense burner, incense bowl. Okay, and for the archaeologists, they this is the drawing or the design. If it was expanded, because it was like designed like a small little cup, right? This was found in Nubia. All right. Notice, let's break this down. We have these 3 sacred boats, so we already know that they were sailing, right? We have the falcon, which we know that the falcon represented Heru. We have we don't know the king, but we have a seated ruler with the white crown of Upper Egypt, which is the south. We have a prisoner and the palace facade again. The palace facade. Now, where did you see that palace facade at? Right here. Okay, the palace facade right there. Around, design. The palace facade was the Esoteric, right? Let's go back. Now, we have the sailboats, prisoner going somewhere, and an antelope. Okay, why is that important? Why is a antelope important? The reason why the antelope is important was because at one point in time, Egypt and Nubia wasn't desert. An antelope is only at a place where there's a lot of vegetation. So we have another thing. So this was at least 8,000 years old. Okay, we have the feline, which I would like to believe either that represented Sekhmet or Basset. But yes, the antelope, because a lot of people would like to say West Africa was not connected to Kemet. You forgot about Lake Chad, number one, and number two, there was a Yellow Nile that broke out and sprung into that reached towards West Africa. It's dried up all the way, but it was like 10,000 some odd years old. So on this coastal incense burner, we have the feline here. We have 3 sacred boats. We have an antelope, which tells us that Kemet and Kush had a lot of grassland there. Okay, a rosette, the falcon deity, which is Heru. We have the king here, and we notice there's a little crook and flail in his hand. Okay, and we have a prisoner. They're taking him somewhere, right? And we have a palace facade, right? These things, these pre-dynastic kings was on the Abydos kings list. Okay, they were recognized by the kings that came after them as real kings of Kemet. Right now, when a Kushite king died, he was said to merge with Asa. Death was the end. It was an initiation into higher existence. The tomb then wasn't just a grave, it was the gate. The gate. All right. And I mentioned before the false door. Whenever there was a false door in a tomb, it represents that the Europeans would like to say it was to trick the grave robbers. No, it was actually a portal for the ancestors to go into the Duat. In the grave, it was covered in sacred symbols and carefully constructed using cosmic proportions. It guided the soul through the Duat, the spiritual dimension beyond physical death. Right now, animal symbolism ties this even further, even deeper. The cow or Heteru wasn't just food or farm animal. It was a living archetype, a sacred symbol of motherhood, fertility, and abundance. It represents Heteru, the goddess of joy, beauty, music, and spiritual intoxication. Now, and also, when you see the cow or a bull, it represented power. In the unseen world, the cow was a cosmic nourisher, feeding the soul with divine essence. By the way, this piece is a piece, this was from ancient Nubia. This was not an Egyptian piece of jewelry right here. This was a Nubian piece of jewelry with Heteru on there. See? Yeah. And so also the lion, the serpent, and the falcon, all these creatures weren't just part of nature, but they were spiritual frequencies, or they were symbolic representation of what the king or the queen should be. The lion, the serpent, the falcon, all these things were characteristics of what a king or queen should be. Okay, they were how the universe communicated with the intuitive mind. Now, by the way, since we're talking about Heteru and them, because there are some structures further into Sudan, I think in Napta Playa, that's older than the Sphinx, that's older than the pyramids. We have to talk about that. Ancient astronomers of Nubia, not the Playa, Taurus, and Heteru. Yeah, we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that. Not right now, though. Not today. Yeah. So we're not done with that. The ancient astronomers of Nubia is gonna come soon. We're gonna deal with that. Now, the two lands. Even the idea of ruling two lands, Kush and Kemet, was layered with esoteric meaning and Kemetic science. On the surface, yeah, it referred to the southern and northern territories. That was easy, right? That's easy. But in the spiritual science of the Kushites, the two lands also symbolize duality, the material and the immaterial, the body, the soul, earth, the sky, as above, so below. In order for a person to be named and recognized as king or queen of any of these lands, Kush or Kemet, you had to control two lands, not just physical, but spiritual also. You had to control yourself. You have to control the animalistic urge of that nature. That's why you had the Heru Emaket with the head of a person in the body of a lion. You had to be above that. But you needed that, right? So the king wasn't just a monarch. He was a mediator of worlds, okay? He was trained to maintain harmony in the scene in the scene realm while remaining attuned to the laws of the unseen. That's the reason why I don't care. I don't care what people say. I think Akhenaten, he was out of balance. Let's argue. As phenomenal as he is, or he was already trained in the Kemetic sciences and all those things. So why did you go out of balance like that and throw the Kemetic dynasty into isfet or turmoil? You know? So, and also the queen was often the priestess in her own right. She balanced and enhanced this energy, grounding divine wisdom into earthly form. This is what makes Kushite spiritual science so unique. It was advanced. It wasn't compartmentalized. There wasn't a science in one corner, religion in another, and art somewhere else. Everything flowed together. Everything was holistic knowledge of the stars, informed farming. Metallurgy was linked to theology. Healing was done through herbs and sound vibration. Music heals also. Music does heal. Spirit and matter were always in dialogue, right? Now, and by the way, I'll get to King Nudakamani in a second. So when we study ancient Kush, we're not just studying old monuments and forgotten myths. We're studying a blueprint of balance, and the laws were for both physical and metaphysical worlds, not just history. It's for the soul, right? Now, dealing with the queen really quick. She balanced and enhanced this energy. What do you think? Should we be able to control our physical and spiritual nature? Like and comment below. Let me know. Should we be able to control that? Do we have, matter of fact, are we able to do that? You see what I'm saying? Because it's right now, what's going on is, I don't know about anybody else's community, but in the Black community, it's out of balance. We know a lot of things. We can do a lot of things, but we're still out of balance. Something is off. Okay? Now let me know. Now, I forgot about that. Book reference, really quick. Sacred Science. Okay. If you want us to get into more Kemetic sciences and everything, this is a good one. Okay. The King of Pharaonic Theocracy by R.A. Swallow D. Lubris. It's a good book. Good book. Now, we talked about a little bit about the political and spiritual power of the Kandake Queens, feminine leadership, Nubian history, symbolism. We're about to get into that. The esoteric role of Apedemak. We're about to get into all that. So we're not done. We're not done. Here we go. Now, the Lion Temple of Naqa. Yep. The Lion Temple of Naqa. Now, in the deserts of ancient Nubia, the sun, stone, and the silence covered the sands of the Lion Temple of Naqa is not only a religious devotion, but metaphysical science. This temple is dedicated to the enigmatic lion-headed deity Apedemak. It's more than a monument. It is an energy portal, a microcosmic blueprint of Kushite cosmic order, and a living text encoded with sacred principles, right? Now, this building, okay, before we get to the building, Apedemak, I love this picture, by the way. Apedemak is unlike any deity in the Egyptian pantheon where the Egyptians worship Heru as the falcon, sky, Neteru, or Set. The Kushites brought forth a new divine figure rooted in their own environment and worldview. See, we have to make things work for us wherever we are. Apedemak is shown as a man with a lion's head, not just a symbol of brute strength, but cosmic authority. Okay, animal wisdom and transformative energy. Okay, now it reminds you of the Sphinx. Okay, lions in African symbology are not simply predators, they were regal spirits, guardians of sacred order. In choosing a lion, the Kushites were expressing more than military might. They were asserting a philosophy of leadership that is fierce but rooted in balance. Apedemak was not just a Neteru or a god of war. He was also a patron of fertility and renewal, suggesting that destruction and creation were two sides of the same divine force. Okay? Yeah, we're out of balance. I agree. Yeah, and so Apedemak he suggested that destruction and creation were two sides of the same divine force. It reminds me of the 5% Nation. Shout out to the fam out there. They always say you got to build and destroy, or you're either doing one or the other. Okay. Now, so on the temple walls, Apedemak is depicted as powerful scenes, spearing enemies, towering over kings, but also nourishing the land and conferring legitimacy to rulers. In one unique scene, he's shown with 3 lion heads sprouting from a single neck. That is terrifying. I'm not gonna lie to you. 3 lion heads. Hold on, bro. That symbolizes multidimensional power, the ability to see, act, and judge beyond the ordinary, right? In one unique scene, he's shown with 3 lion heads. Like I said, this is shown, like I said before, is sprouting, 3 lion heads sprouting from a single neck, symbolizing multidimensional power. See, this is the more of a better drawing, a rendering of that temple image. He's able to see, act, and judge all at the same time, beyond the ordinary, right? And so this points to a esoteric interpretation of Apedemak. He represents the higher self of the king, the awakening aspect of the divine masculinity that has conquered not just the enemies, but the lower self. Divine masculinity. Hold on, because we always talk about divine femininity, but we forget there's a divine masculinity also. Balance, right? So, in essence, to rule like Apedemak was to rule with inner fire, external command, and spiritual depth. Do you think we as a people still need these principles? Okay, inner fire, external command, and spiritual depth. Let me know. All right, we got some time. Oh, I forgot. Y'all let me know if you want us to do a Q&A real quick towards the end. Type Q&A in there. All right. If you're live, all right, put Q&A in there. We may have time to do that. All right, let's go. All right, now at architecture and cosmic symbolism. Now, the Lion Temple is small but packed with cosmic symbolism. Its layout follows principles of sacred geometry, orientation, proportion, and symmetry intended to resonate with the divine order of the cosmos. Temples in Kush weren't just places of worship. These were portals between dimensions. As you see, this is the outer court here, and it's not in that angle that I wanted, but it is going into a straight line as you're going through it by symmetry and by degrees, right? The inner sanctum of the Lion Temple was a place where the king or priest could commune with Apedemak directly. Okay, now constructed during the reign of Nanakamani and Queen Amenetori around the first century, these sites reflect civilization fluent in the language of the Neteru, okay, sacred geometry, astral alignments, and the alchemical fusion of divine masculine and feminine. At the heart of the temple is Apedemak,